Hey everybody, producer Alex here. This is part 2 of our interview with Ed Best. Like I mentioned in the first part, unfortunately we didn't record any intros and outros for the different parts because we weren't aware that we were going to split it up into a few parts. So, this is me just announcing that this is the beginning of the episode. Anyway, enjoy.
You teach individual lessons as well as group lessons for bands at a large workshop. Could you talk about the benefits of each type of instruction and when it's more beneficial for one-on-one versus group instruction?
Oh, sure. The um the, the three basic types of classes that I do are, individual lessons, group lessons, and then of course there's like weekend or week-long seminars like summer schools or whatever. There's definite pros and cons to each one of those. The Let's start with the seminars. Now, these are basically one and done type of deals. There's no expectation of ever seeing these people again necessarily. So an instructor will come in there, myself, will come in there with enough material to keep you busy and occupied and push you with no expectation of you getting all of it correct in that time frame. So you have something to work on when you leave, right? It does me no good to give you one really hard thing and we work on it all week and you get it and you know how to do one thing. Mm-hmm. Now what? I don't know. Next step, but you're gone. However, so there's pros and cons there. You walk in there with a teacher that doesn't know you, that has to learn you. You don't know them. There's no relationship yet. They give you lots of material. You work on it. You might not get it all, and you have to walk out of there with stuff still to work on. So that's good and bad, right? One of the definite pluses is you're in a class of your peers. There are people that you've never met before that you now meet and you can network with and help each other and encourage each other because they're going through right now the same thing as you are. I might be friendly with you, but I'm not a peer because I went through what you're going through a long time ago, right? I can relate to it, but not in your eyes. Somebody who's going through it right now or who just went through it or is just about to go through it, you help each other. Bruce Hitchens calls that the magic. There's nothing that can replace just having all those people around you that are like-minded, have a common interest, and are positive and pushing you in the right direction and helping you and encouraging you through, your journey. The second part is the group lessons. So I can see people as opposed to one-on-one in small groups of 3, 4, 5. They all start together, typically from the beginning up through being able to play simple drum scores in a band. Well, positives there are you have a lot of people to divert my attention. It can get very draining to have me on you the entire time. However, if I say to person number one, hey, watch your left hand because you're doing this and this and this, the entire room, without having attention on them, can fix their own left hand and go, ooh, I'm glad it wasn't me because I'm doing the same thing. So that's positive in that you get that. Another positive thing is other people in the room ask questions that either you didn't think of or you were too scared to ask. So you get the benefits of their thought process. And I can answer it directly to them without you feeling like you're asking a dumb question. You let them ask the dumb question, even though they're still all good questions, but you feel like that at the time when you think you should know this, but somebody else asked the question. So the downside of that is inevitably there's a split in the class. Somebody catches on to this one aspect really fast and they're ready to move on, but the rest of the class isn't. Or the whole class has moved on, but the one person isn't quite ready to go. And everybody takes a turn on one end of that or another, on usually both at one point or another. So there's an eventual split in the class, and you have to have, and it's kind of difficult ego-wise for me to say, hey, you guys are more advanced. I'm taking you a different time. You guys are less advanced. You guys are coming in a different time. So again, it depends on the attitude of the people involved, but that's the challenge for sure. Eventually there's a split in the class. You're no longer one big team anymore, at least for a while. Then there's, of course, the private lessons where you see individuals one-on-one. Some of the positives are that you see one teacher, one student, you build a relationship, you learn each other's quirks, you learn each other's expectations, how to work together. And I can bring an individual along at their own pace. Some people are ready to fly, and I don't hold them back. It's time to go. And some people need to, especially at the beginning, go like a snail through every single little aspect, and they ask a million questions and need to really fully understand it. And that's great because they're not holding somebody else back, and they're never feeling like they're being held back. So they can go whatever pace they need and at this point. And everybody at some point or another needs to go like a snail, and some people need to fly depending on what stage of their development they are. So that's really nice. Again, the downside is you don't learn how to play with other people. It's a major issue. If people only ever take private lessons, they play by themselves, and you try to use recordings or whatever and play with me, but I'm a professional play along with people person. So they don't know how to adjust and play with other people. So you have to kind of make sure that you have a balance there. So if they're taking private lessons, I try to really encourage them to at least find a drumming buddy or a band they can go hang out with and play along at least on a few simple things when they're ready early on, so they get used to playing along with other people, because that's an entirely different thing. Whereas in the group lessons, you're doing that from day one, and it's not really, a big deal. But I always tell people, if you had to, whether it's time commitment or money or whatever, you have to pick one of those three. I would always pick the private lessons, because that going at your own pace is probably the most valuable thing. Well, again, the schools are awesome for inspiration. They kind of point you in the right direction. You meet a lot of great people. It's a one and done thing. There's no follow-up with that unless you have a private instructor. The group lessons are great, but again, eventually you either get left behind or you feel like you're bored because you're ahead and nobody else is there, and the teacher has to split their time amongst you. So I 100% would recommend the private lessons if you have to make a choice between the three. But at the same time, they're all really good in their own regards.
Cool. Yeah. Okay. Another one. In your opinion, as a drummer and as someone who teaches drumming quite frequently, what are one or two things that pipers need to learn about drumming?
Okay, so the two big things, they're kind of related, is that drummers don't have, it sounded weird, it's a different mindset, because the drummers and pipers are trained in different rooms, right? Mm-hmm. And they have similar language but different language to try to get the same thing to happen. And then even you get to band practice, once you're all in the band together, you still practice in separate rooms except for like the last 30 minutes of the night when you all get together. So that's an issue there. But the two things that I would definitely say is that drummers don't have duration. Pipers talk in hold that note longer, watch my fingers, I'm giving that note more time. And a held note for a piper is a very active thing. They're working about like tone, that hold that thing, and listening to the reeds and arm pressure and this and that and blowing. And drummers have and you wait. We have no duration. So a lot of those little gaps in there have to be filled in with either other notes or counting. And sometimes, I've had this discussion with lots of pipers, is when they quote unquote express a tune, that just means they slow down. And like, I would like them to please, when they're playing with the drummers, express it on the beat. And it's totally possible, but you have to make sure that there's a give and take there. You can't, this comes to my next point, is our drum scores are written for certain tempos. If the pipers give a tempo, we're playing this march at, 74 beats per minute. You can't decide that I would like it at 80 all of a sudden. You can also decide I would like it at 60, because that significantly changes the composition of the drum score. All of our rolls, and for the pipers listening, a roll is not just a sustained sound. It sounds like it, you hear that shh, but there's actually a whole bunch of little notes that we overlap with each other in there. And we have a definite number and a specific rhythm that if you go slower, we're going to add a different rhythm than if you go faster. And that's just, one example. So I can tell the pipers anything, it's realize that there's a different mindset as far as impact versus duration. Also, drum scores are written to a very specific tempo, and if you have a change in the tempo or anything musically at all, you have to communicate with the drummers because yes, it does matter. I mean, there's some fantastic stories about. I was writing music once for a band, and the pipe major sent me some sheet music and a recording of himself playing music. Well, he made a mistake in one of the measures. Not a big deal, but I heard the mistake. I was reading the music, and I wasn't sure which one was correct. So I called him and I said, "Is the written music correct, or was it a typo in the music, or did you make a mistake on the recording?" And he was shocked that it made such a difference. Because it really does. Another thing another great story. There's a goosebump moment. I was teaching a class called, this is a fantastic class, by the way, everybody should take it, Drumming for Pipers. So it's teaching this very question, but it's a whole weekend long class of drumming stuff that pipers need to know. And a big part of what I did was had short little piping examples that the pipers would bring the practice channels, and short drumming examples. They would learn to play those along with that. Now, a lot of cool stuff, including the tempo thing. I would have them play a fairly complicated drum part to a slow, easy pipe part, and I would constantly be speeding the tempo up until they couldn't handle it anymore. I'm like, yes, that's what happens. You have to consider the entire package, not just what you're doing. So I had this one pipe major at the second day of the class. It was a weekend-long class. He raised his hand. He said, "Before we start, I've got to tell you something." His whole band had come to this clinic. It wasn't just for his band, but his band had come to the clinic. And they had a rehearsal. After a full day of clinics with me, they had their own rehearsal, which I thought was fantastic. They're diehards, right? But he said that after halfway through the clinic, we're only at the 50% mark, there was an issue in their music. And I wish I knew the specifics of it, but there was an issue they had. They could never get the drumming and piping together, ever, and that part. And they'd been working on it for months and could not figure out how to make it sound good. After taking half of my class on it, he said they had a 5-minute conversation at that rehearsal. They now had a common language to speak, and they fixed the issue within 5 minutes. Wow. I had goosebumps. I'm like, guys, don't make me cry. I still got to teach all day. Right? It was so cool. And that guy even sent me an email later saying, "You know what? My eyes are completely opened. I just would make musical changes to the piping without considering the drum section. I just assumed they would figure it out."
It's not that easy.
It makes big changes. So again, big thing to tell the pipers, if you make any changes, even if you think it's insignificant, communicate with the drummers. Maybe it is insignificant, and it's a short conversation. Maybe they don't care. It's great. Cool. Move on. But if it is, you'll be glad you had that 5-minute conversation. It really is. I even had one time, I talk to pipe majors a lot. This one guy had 2 tunes that were closing the medley, and he decided to flip-flop them without telling me. Yeah, the last 2 reels in the medley. I was like, "Excuse me?" He said, "Well, you just have 2 drum scores, right? You just reverse the order them, you'll be fine." I'm like, "No, that's not how it works at all." I had a big finale planned for the second one, and the way it's written now is there's a big finale, and then we go on anyway, and we just kind of peter out. Because the first one was written to like peter out, so there's a big impact into the last tune for a big finale, and those are things I consider when I'm, writing a tune. So changing the order of tunes, yes, it matters. Taking out or putting in grace notes, yes, it matters. Changing the tempo, yes, it matters. So and just in general, communicating with the drum section, and don't assume they'll figure it out. I've had one of my pet peeves is discovering changes in pipe music while we're on full instruments at the end of rehearsal. Instead of coming in and saying, "Hey, we made a change. Does this affect you at all?" Sometimes it's, "No, we're cool, thank you." It's a 2-minute conversation. If it is a significant change, it's like a 6 or 7-minute conversation. It's not that big a deal. Most of us can help with that. We're not saying don't do it. We're just saying include us in the conversation, please.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we actually started doing that more with our band with, as a great example, last couple practices, we were playing with a full band, and then we stopped, and then there was a particular part where Stevie was actually there, and he said, "Wait, everyone, just stop." He said, "I'm going to play it with Cody, our drum sergeant, and you listen to what he's playing and how it lines up." And we're all just like, "You pipers are going to listen to what the drummers are playing?"
It goes with our music, believe it or not.
Yeah, and they were listening, they're like, "Oh."
Yes. Oh yeah, I remember doing that with Stevie. Stevie was my old pipe major in another band, so I remember doing that exact thing with him. And it's, if you write the drum score as well, and you're all considering each other, you have to, it works. Everybody's in this together. It's a big team effort. I heard somebody say one time, this old school piper, like, this is a pipe band. The tail doesn't wag the dog. I'm like, no, it doesn't work anymore. I'm sorry, it doesn't. We all have an integral part. And you guys have seen, if I've made changes to snare parts for whatever reason, the first thing I do is take a look at the bass and tenor parts to see if it affected it.
Mm-hmm.
First thing I do before we move on, bass and tenors, get over here. I just might have been a simple little change, and 9 times out of 10 it doesn't affect anything. But the one time it does, we need to make sure it's adjusted appropriately.
Mm-hmm.
So we're all on the same page here. We're all on the same team. You can't just like. No, on a sports team, you would never have one guy decide to run the other way without communicating with the whole team. Like, that's not how it works, right? It's just, they should all follow me. No, we should all have the same plan in the first place.
Yeah. What else?
Moving on a little bit, what has been your 1 or 2 most memorable moments in your pipe band career?
Lots of good moments for sure. Lots of amazing stuff have happened. But as far as my playing career, what's funny is I actually get a similar high playing for really big concerts as I do for playing for big competitions. If I have a good show, I feel really good afterwards, right? But I'll keep this to competitions for a second. One time I was playing in the grade 1 world in the finals. We were the last band on. And I'll never forget how excited we all were to play. We just were prepared and excited and enthusiastic, and we couldn't wait to get out there. And we played, and I walked away, and I was like, yeah, that was fun. And all of a sudden, my legs started shaking. Like, oh my God, guys, you know what just happened? Like, what? We just played the Worlds. I didn't even dawn on me that it was anything other than just another fun run through until after that. The whole group was so in sync and so prepared and having so much fun and so tight that we didn't care where we played, who we played for, how often we played. We just wanted to play. And it hit me as we're literally walking away from the final circle. Like, we're all walking away together. We're the last band on, so there's nothing even left to watch. And it hit me about, 100 yards away. To me, that was just so cool to have that kind of a moment. The other one is a little more embarrassing. I haven't shared this story with many people, but It was a couple years later. I was the lead drummer for a grade 4 band, and we went over to Scotland. And like a lot of bands, you don't go straight to the Worlds. You play a couple games like the previous weekend, North Berwick, Bridge of Allen, things like that. So this particular one was at North Berwick. We actually had a rough morning of rehearsals. It was a bit dodgy at best, and we were having a tough time of it. And I was really proud because nobody freaked out. We all took a moment and went, with the drums down, took a little walk, came back, regrouped, and then had another couple really good rehearsals. And we probably played our best show ever, period, that year on the field at North Berwick. Like, fantastic. We just walked off like that was, I don't know what to say, guys, because that was amazing. And we heard it, and I'm like, was it really that good? Somebody had videoed it, right? So we watched it back. Like, oh yeah, it was that good. We were just pumped all day. But the story doesn't end there. That's not the embarrassing part. So we're at closing ceremonies. They're just the point where they're announcing all the winners of the contest. And in Scotland, before they announce the winners of the contest, they always announce the best drum corps award for each group. So they got to grade 4 and said, and the winner, the best drum corps award goes to, and before they said it, I started walking forward to accept the award.
Oh
Ugh.
I started walking. I'm like, what am I doing? I didn't plan that. I just started. By the way, we won it. Thank goodness. We actually won. I knew we would because it was that good. I didn't hear anybody else that could have beaten us that day. But there's no guarantees. We've been at this long enough. Anyway, so I started walking forward. And as I'm walking, I'm 3 steps in going, I've kind of committed to this, haven't I? I started looking for a good place to U-turn in case they didn't announce us, like pretending, oh, look, bass drummer. Hey, how's it going, buddy? Let's talk. Right? It was pretty embarrassing. Very memorable.
Nice.
But I wouldn't recommend ever doing that.
I wouldn't plan
It was
on
a bit
it.
much.
Huh.
Not at all. Not at all.
The confidence. That's a very confident move there.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm like, actually, seriously, afterwards, I was like, I'm a jerk. I cannot believe I did that. I should at least wait the extra 5 seconds for them to announce the. Oh, anyway, it was all good because we won. I got the trophy, took pictures, shook hands with a bunch of dignitaries, and it was good. But that would have stick in my brain, and I will never do that again. I don't care how good it was. I will wait. I will sit on my hands until it's over.
Wow. That's a good story.
Yeah.
Nice. Next question. What are you most looking forward to about Pipe Band in the next year or two?
Ooh, next year or two, this year, one of the bands I work with is going to the Worlds. So I am going with them.
Wow.
So I'm definitely looking for, and I haven't been over to the Worlds in Scotland at all for several years now, so I've missed that. So I'm really looking forward to getting back over there. One of the things I really am enjoying right now that I'm looking forward to again is I have lots of, and we've been mostly talking about competition bands, but I work with a lot of service bands. And I've had the privilege and the honor to work with several larger workshops that deal primarily or exclusively, in some cases, in a lot of cases, with service bands, police bands, fire bands. And I've really enjoyed watching that standard rise.
Mm-hmm.
Because without getting too much into it, they've had a bad rap. Some of it was warranted, some wasn't. But I'm thrilled to be on the basically ground level of several organizations helping raise that standard. It's becoming more the norm that people want to really, really improve their playing and sound good, and honor the memorials that they're playing at with the higher quality music. So I am thrilled to be involved in that aspect. So I can't say enough about those group of people. I mean, I always have a little moment when I work with them. I talk to them. We joke around a lot. It's obviously a lot of teasing each other and good-natured teasing. But there's always a moment I say, look, I really respect what you guys do. As a matter of fact, and part of it comes from my end is my grandfather, he's still alive, he's 90 years old, was a Pittsburgh City firefighter. So I always tell them, guys, when you or somebody like you plays for my grandfather's funeral 20, 30 years from now, but he's going to outlive all of us, right? But when you play for his funeral, I will be in the front row in a suit, not a kilt, not a T-shirt that says, hey, I know what I'm listening to. And I would expect you would show every family the same courtesy as you would show me, knowing full well that I know what I'm listening to.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of hits them like, oh, right. Because I've heard that, not just from service bands, from other bands. Well, nobody in the audience knows any better anyway. Which is not true at all. You're just making excuses, right? So whenever you hear, I've been thrilled to be on the ground level of knocking that phrase out of band's vocabulary. So it doesn't matter who you're playing for, you're playing in public. It's kind of funny, I know, slight tangent here, but one of the questions I always ask at these various events, whether it's for a competition band, service band, or whoever, I say, okay, if you're not competing, what don't you have to do? They said, well, we don't compete anyway, or this isn't a competition coming up anyway. So and I'm always like, okay, let's finish that sentence. You're not competing. What don't you have to do? I've only come up with 2 things that are legitimate answers to that. The answer, you guys want my answers? You want to guess? The answers are specific tune requirements, right? In a competition, you want to compare apples to apples. So you'll say it's an MSR, a quick march medley or whatever, or a time limit. Like you have to play 3 to 5 minutes or 4 to 6 minutes or whatever your specific requirements are for this. Not in a competition, you can play whatever tunes you think sound the best and are appropriate for this venue. And you can play as long or as short as you feel is appropriate. You can play under 3 minutes, you can play over 10 minutes, whatever. And that's the only thing I've come up with that's any different. Other than that, you still have to know your music. You still have to tune your instruments, et cetera, et cetera. So I wouldn't want to go and listen to a cover band play In-A-Gadda-Da-Vida and Stairway to Heaven without knowing the words. I paid a cover fee, to get in here, and the drinks are way overpriced, and you didn't even bother to learn the words. And I said, well, I'm challenging myself. It's a hard song, man. I'm like, yeah.
So don't
well,
play
challenge your garage until you get it, and then bring it out here. I want to hear Louie Louie or something. So as long as you know it, I don't care, right? So anyway, I'm actually so coming back to the original question. The point is, I've been really happy that I've stopped a lot of bands from saying stuff like that, because I want everybody to have a good time. I want everybody to sound good. I want everybody to have a good reputation. Every time you play in public, you're representing yourself, your band, your teacher, but you're also representing all of us. Somebody out there is hearing bagpipes or Scottish drumming for the first time. And if you can make a good impression on some little kid, or more importantly, on their mom when they're walking by, the kid goes, hey, can I do that? And the mom goes, that god-awful racket? No way. You just lost one more piper or drummer for the universe, whether your band got them or not. Or if you sound really good, the mom might go, hey, that's really cool. Let's go introduce ourselves and see if we can find you a teacher. So the biggest things I've really looked forward to doing is obviously, going to the Worlds, but more importantly, just helping with that attitude no matter what level you're playing at. You can play the simplest thing really well in public and have a good time doing it and promote the art properly without just showing us what you can't do yet. Anyway, and music, it's what we're all here for, right? To have good music.
Yeah.
My litmus test is would I want to listen to it?
That's a good way to think about
If
it.
I'm playing something, what do I listen to? If I'm messing it up because I'm still struggling to get this bit, I don't want to listen to that. And neither does the audience. That's just my take on it.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
All right. Self-promotion time. So you talked a lot about how you teach and you judge and you do a lot of lessons and workshops and everything. What is a way that people can contact you if they're interested in getting lessons?
The 2 best ways to get a hold of me right now would be through my Facebook page. I have a Scottish Drum Lessons Facebook page. It's a lot of fun. We have a lot of fun on there. There's a lot of music tips and a lot of music jokes and things like that. We have a lot of fun, but that's also a good way to contact me. So you go to Facebook, and even if you don't want to talk to me, just give me a like. It makes me look really popular. It's awesome. And my regular email address, which is just edbest, no dots, dashes, anything, edbest@hotmail.com. Those are the 2 best ways to get a hold of me. And as long as you're online liking things, I have 2 YouTube pages you can click on as well if you want. And that's just YouTube Scottish Drum Lessons. And then I have another YouTube channel, which is really odd name, but Mr. Best 27, MR Best 27. and one is more towards education. One is geared more towards demonstration.
Okay.
Drum scores and things like that, just I don't use for demonstration on Mr. Best 27. And Scottish drum lessons is more exercises and teaching tips. So as a matter of fact, if you're really into it, you can look on my YouTube page, and there's a couple beginning lessons, like how to hold the sticks, how to strike the drum properly. And I know teachers around the world that use those videos as a starting point for all of their students. Like, it's required watching and listening to before they even start the other classes. I got teachers from Scotland, Ireland, Australia, letting me know that they use those as their starting point for their students. They all start with that before they go on to whatever the curriculum is at that particular lesson or school. So that'd be a fun place for you to go, at least get a little inkling of what lessons with me are like. And if nothing else, you come to a lesson, you've heard it before, so it's not the first time you're hearing it, so you can kind of have a good jumping off place.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right, well, thanks for being on this first episode, or this episode.
Episode.
This has been fun. Don't leave quite yet, everyone. I mean, right now you can't, but what I'm saying is we'll be back next week
Yes.
with more another episode.
Episodes.
Another episode for you to watch and enjoy.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thanks.
Thanks for listening, everyone. If you enjoyed this show, then support us on Patreon for exclusive content, as well as the video of us recording this. We'll have special exercises we'll be writing, as well as tips and tricks with tenor drumming and other instruments to come. Subscribe to us on YouTube for some tenor tutorials and possibly other tutorials later on. And like us on Facebook at Podband Pipecast.